We've always had waterways in Canada and really in the US as well, but it used to be a lot harder to move goods and people because there were so many natural obstacles, so waterfalls and rapids and things like that. So with the creation of the canals, it created a real way for people to be connected easily, for us to transport goods and people across distances. And so yeah, as the waterways got built, the country really got opened up in those areas. So we saw the Montreal become a real shipping port, for example, when the Lachine Canal got open. You saw a lot of trade going on between the US and Canada at that point. So there were canals that were created for those reasons and some for different reasons as well. So some of the canals we manage link up to 75 different cities together, and it creates a water corridor between these places. So for sure you can go by land, but the fact that you can also go by water makes it a really kind of unique experience you can have. In fact, there are people called loopers who will do gigantic loops from New York City all the way up into Canada and back down and around. So the canals are really important in that regard because they become a bit of a destination. So you have a lot of communities that are supported economically from that, whether it's people buying groceries or shopping or just doing different experiences that a community might have to offer. I think the communities that the canals go through is what makes each canal quite distinct and have a unique flavor. So when I look at the Rideau Canal, you have at the one end Ottawa, the capital of Canada. It's frozen in the winter. It's the world's longest skateway, so you can skate about 5 miles in each direction. We have a big Winterlude festival. That's a very unique thing about the Rideau Canal, and if you talk about the Rideau Canal, most people may recognize it for the winter skating, in fact not even the boating in the summer, so that's quite unique to it. You go further inland on the canal, you have different historic sites that are located along the canal that tell a part of the story of the canal, but feels very different than, say, a canal in downtown Montreal, which was established really as a big part of industry, and so it still has a much more industrial, sort of urban feel to it. So yeah, definitely each canal is unique. And they're really unique by the cities that are around them as well. Right now we're making a lot of investments. You can imagine the age of some of this infrastructure. So the federal government in Canada has invested $1 billion into the canals. And when you look at the economic benefit of that, that's created over 2,000 jobs. So when you talk about leveraging the canals, that type of investment creates jobs in communities, and it brings more money into communities for development and growth. So on the infrastructure side, there's a lot there. Canadian canals are not unlike the Erie Canal in that we have hydro development on our canals. So we have 26 hydro plants, and we have new expansions and new projects that are coming on. But we're also doing a lot with the tourism industry. So we have a lot of special events. We've had Red Bull Crashed Ice in downtown Ottawa. So if people are familiar with that, it's like a downhill ski race on skates. It's an extreme sport. We had that going right down the locks in Ottawa. So a great opportunity for a whole different audience of people that might not know anything about the canals to experience the canals. We had over 50,000 visitors over 2 days for that event. I could really go on with examples of things that we're doing, but I guess one of the big things we're doing is looking at some of our old historic buildings that would have been maybe just sort of left, and we're repurposing those buildings. We want to make places out of our canals so that people actually want to come and stick around for a while. But I think there's also going to be a future question about canals when you look at climate change and some of the weather forecasting models that we've had over the years, what we used to call a 1 in 100 year flood. They're coming a lot more frequently now. So everything's changing a little bit. So we'll have to look at the ability of these canals to sort of protect communities in terms of flooding. So we're re-looking at some of our infrastructure now, asking ourselves that question. After 150 years as a country, we're really looking now at some of our history, which hasn't been the best maybe or the nicest, and you can't change history, but just moving forward, we're looking at how do we make our places and how do we reconcile with the Indigenous people of Canada that have been there a lot longer than 150 years. So we have that lens on what we're doing now. We're trying to open up our places a little bit so that some of the local First Nations and Métis communities have the opportunity to tell their stories in our places or gain some economic development potential as well out of our places. So I think the future for canals is going to continue to be very diverse and very exciting. So I think what's interesting is they're so integrated into the landscape that people forget that they're actually were hand-built and that they have these really powerful histories and that they shape the countries we live in. So all I would say, and this is what I've done since I started managing canals for Parks Canada, is it's made me take a different look at what my backyard is. So I live in Ottawa, I cycle along the canal, and I see it completely differently now. I understand its role in really the formation of Canada, and so I would just suggest that people take a second look at the canal that might be outside your door, and you might cycle on it or rollerblade on it or skateboard around it. You know, you might be surprised at some of the stories that are associated with these canals.